Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast with Benji Naesen. We just finished watching the men's individual time trial world championships. We watched the women's world champs yesterday, almost simultaneously with recording our world championships preview podcast. If you haven't listened to that, the first or 3/4 of it is dedicated to just the road races, so it's not actually out of date yet. So once you finish this podcast, go and check out our World Champs preview to get our thoughts on what's going to happen in the road races this weekend. But we're going to do the men's time trial first, freshen our minds, and then go to the women's time trial afterwards, which actually has a fair bit of news. As we said on the preview, the time trial for the parcours for both the men and women was 32K or like 31.8 Ks, starting in Imola on the Autodrome and then finishing back there as well. The last 3 to 4 Ks or maybe 3 Ks was actually the track, and that actually made it a little bit interesting, and there's a few things to talk about there. But yeah, it was pretty much flat. The winner was going to go over 50 Ks an hour in the men's. We knew that. So yeah, pretty much flat apart from a few little climbs. And what you don't see when you just look at the profile and when you actually look at the map of the course itself, you see how many twists and turns there are, particularly in the Imola section. Now, it is mostly straight, but there are still a fair few turns. It wasn't like like they're in the middle of the UAE or something, or Qatar, where they just go on a dead flat highway, no turns, nothing. It was a little bit technical, and very technical in the beginning and end. But Benji, remind us, who were the favourites for the men's TT, maybe the top 5 favourites?
So in general, the two main favorites were Filippo Ganna and Rowan Dennis. Outside of that, the likes of Wout van Aert, also Kampenaerts was up there. I think Stefan Kung in the top 5 as well. Dumoulin was up there. That's more than 5 already. But behind the two top favorites, there were quite a few riders that could really battle it out as well for the third place and potentially challenge those first two riders. So it was not necessarily a decided field, but we did have like two riders that we expected to be above the rest.
Obviously, Rowan Dennis coming off back-to-back world championships in 18-19. His first world champs on a Pinarello, though, not on the BMC he was on in the 18-19 performances. Ganna, who destroyed the Tirreno Adriatico Stage 1 ITT course record and putting like 30 seconds into Dennis and co. in a 10.5-minute time trial. So Ganna was the favourite. He certainly showed pretty good form leading up to it in this year. He's pretty young as well, only 24 years old, the Italian. And he was Benji's pick to win today's World Championships. I picked Dennis because I don't know why in hindsight. But anyway, moving on to sort of how the TT developed. And now we'll get to the results, but I'm just trying to build a bit of a narrative on how it unfolded as we were watching it. It's good to start with maybe Eduardo Orfini. He set a pretty good time for the intermediate, 19:06. That was maybe 30 seconds better than the next best one. Durbridge set about a 19:06 as well, I think. And Andres Legnossond, the Norwegian, very talented TT rider. And a few of you hit me up on Instagram saying we were remiss for not mentioning him in our preview. But yeah, he had a pretty good performance. Mikkel Bjerg, he was actually a fair bit behind Orfini at that intermediate time split, which was 19 minutes and 6. So Orfini was looking good, but then we had in the back of our minds, okay, well, yes, he set a really good time, and I thought Durbridge was going to go really well. But then again, he hasn't been near the top level of the TT specialists for at least a year or more. So we knew the guys rolling off later were going to go quicker, and they certainly did. I think the next best was maybe Cavagna, and then Wout van Aert was the man, Benji, who really, I think you started to get pretty excited at that point when Wout van Aert rolled in, I think, on 18:51, a full 14 seconds ahead of Orfini, and Van Aert looked like he was pacing it pretty steadily as well. I think we got a rough time cut split at like 8 Ks in. What did you think Wout van Aert's ceiling was today? Were you just hoping podium at best? Did you think he could genuinely win it, Benji? Like, putting aside that he's Belgian, etc. But yeah, what did you realistically think he could do today?
To be honest, I did think that the two riders that we said beforehand that were the two favorites of winning this were a cut above the rest. And because of that, I never really saw anybody else taking the crown here, because you've got two specialists that work for this all year, and then there's this Belgian guy that just comes from the Tour de France, didn't train for this at all, and then ends up, doing a great time. So, I didn't expect him to be this close, to be honest. It probably was more of a potential top five in my eyes, but it's Wout van Aert, it's 2020, so you can basically expect him to be up in every race that he rides. We can't really pretend to be shocked anymore, because he surprises us so much that every single time he does, it becomes less and less effective on our souls. So in the end, I'm really happy that he did a good time today.
So yeah, Benji was once again, he was in the helicopter, he was shooting me messages, DMing me, being like, holy, and I tell him, you can't tell me what's actually happening, because I'm on this Australian, it takes a long time for the signal to get all the way down here, and he's gone, whoa, and I knew what was happening, because it was Filippo Ganna. He'd rolled off the start ramp second last, it was Dennis last, obviously, as the reigning champion. Not in the national championship skin suit. It was Durbridge, I think, was wearing that because he's the ITT champ for Australia. Anyway, Ganner actually started his Garmin or whatever they use at Ineos after the ramp, which was interesting. Maybe he just forgot to turn it on. He destroyed the intermediate time split. It was a slower course in the first half, I think. I'm not sure how there was a bit of wind around. We thought there might be storms. He ended up, the average of the winner was well over 50 k's an hour, but Ganna set a massive new best on the intermediate time split of 18:05. That was a full minute and a second ahead of Eduardo Orfini. Rowan Dennis then a couple of minutes later rolled around. We were keenly waiting to see what time split he was going to sort of make, what his time was going to be at the intermediate, and he was 21 seconds behind Filippo Ganna. And I know it always sounds ridiculous, but particularly because Ganna looks like he's going really hard. Like he looks like he's trying to rip the cranks out of his bike. And Dennis is a really smooth rider, so it's sometimes stupid to be saying, oh, well, Ganna looks like he's going quicker, but he did actually look like he was going quicker, and he certainly was. And the other big surprise, and we've sort of got it the wrong way around, but no matter, the man who'd actually shocked us more than the Ganna time was Geraint Thomas, setting 18:41, still 36 seconds behind Ganna, but Thomas did it first. Thomas I think he held the intermediate time check for quite a while and then ended up being in the hot seat for quite a while. So he destroyed, Affini's time, Durbridge's time up to that intermediate. And I'll just read out the top 12 at the intermediate, just so you know where they were at that point, and then we'll see who dropped off and who improved positions by the end of this TT, because there was a fair bit of movement after the intermediate time check. First, Ganna, 21 seconds behind was Dennis, then another 15 seconds behind Thomas, current in bronze at the intermediate, and Stefan Kung, who I thought would podium today, the Swiss rider. He was 6 seconds behind Thomas in fourth. Tom Dumoulin looking very, very good at the intermediate, just like he paced sort of quite aggressively in that Planche de Belfi time trial and faded at the end. He was in fifth at the intermediate, about 46 seconds behind Ganna, but just 4 seconds behind Stefan Kung, and same time, or just a half a second ahead of his Jumbo-Visma teammate Wout van Aert in sixth. So Van Aert was in sixth at the intermediate, just 6 seconds ahead of Cavagna seventh, Victor Campenaerts and Alex Dowsett. They were about 53 seconds and 59 seconds respectively behind Filippo Ganna, so a fair way off the pace for those guys. I didn't think a podium was really realistic for either of them, and I think Kasper Askren rounded up the top 10 exactly 1 minute behind Ganna at the intermediate. And so the average was 49.4 for Ganna there, and 46.8 or 46.85 for Askren down in 10th up to that intermediate. So it was certainly quicker in the last half of the TT. But yeah, which performance there surprised you and really got your attention, Benji? Was it Kung doing quite well? Was it Van Aert? Did you think Van Aert was negatively splitting it or pacing it slowly? Or did you think Dennis was going to come back? Like, what were your thoughts about what was going to happen when you saw those times?
Well, firstly, an official apology to any Geraint Thomas fans out there that Dowsett is indeed a worse time trialist than Geraint Thomas. So I'll lift that off all of your shoulders. I know you were waiting on it if you listened to the last podcast we did, but yeah, I was surprised by Thomas's performance, and I do admire that he did this. Well done, man. And as I said before, it's kind of funny that some riders are focusing all out for World Championships, and then there's this guy, Geraint Thomas, who was well letting his bike up to the side in a COVID season, and then basically ends up beating a few of them on this time trial. So kind of funny, but in the end, I do appreciate his performance. In general, I was not necessarily surprised by Wout van Aert having a decent time there, but I already wrote him off kind of over there because I didn't really expect him to come back too much after the intermediate because, well, I made a mistake thinking that because if we compare it to previous time trials that what Wout van Aert does, he's a bit of a diesel like Kampenaerts, but Kampenaerts didn't really have a good day today. They basically started one pace. After that, they start to speed up a bit and they speed up a slight bit more and a slight bit more. And towards the end, they are at their level and they are at their max. So it's a bit of a hard engine that can last long. And if we compare that to Ghana, who starts his time trials at a very high level and he lowers it by a tiny bit towards the end of a time trial, and we see that at the way he is better in shorter time trials. But obviously, Ghana is great in longer ones as well. We saw that today. But in general, it just feels like he starts his time trials at a higher level than he ends them, compared to a Van Aert who does the opposite. Is that something I just imagine, or is that actually a thing?
Yeah, I mean, we saw obviously Wout van Aert negatively split the Planche de Belfi ITT, but that's a way different parcours. But obviously, he didn't negative split as aggressively as that today, I don't think. But I think that was his pacing strategy. And I think Dumoulin's pacing strategy from Planche de Belfi as well, while scaled down, it was still go out super hard and see if you can hold it. Whereas, yeah, as you said, I think Wout van Aert really builds into the ITT. And then after the intermediate, I think the next man onto the hot seat who really bumped Eduardo Orfini off it was Geraint Thomas, and he was going to be sitting there for quite a while. He set a new best time of, let me see if my maths is all right, 36 minutes and about 31 seconds, I believe. So Thomas in the hot seat, starting people thinking, holy, could there be an Ineos 1-2-3 in this World Champs ITT, which it looked like that could definitely happen for quite a while. And yeah, Thomas looked really, really good, as you said, Benji. Let's remember though, Benji picked Pogacar winning Tour de France, and he also picked the ultimate winner of this individual of the World Champs, and I got it wrong. But yeah, Great Britain have been baying for your blood ever since you said that, Benji. So just like I had to apologise to Team Sunweb and half apology about Case Bowl, yeah, we've got to do public apologies on this podcast. But yeah, Thomas looking fantastic for that Giro, and we'll probably maybe talk about it. I'll talk about it now, but you see the photos of the Stelvio, you see the weather. If there's no mountains and it's just an ITT fest and some midi mountain stages, whew, Thomas should be the favourite for that in the form he's looking at. But just keeping on track with the world champs. Then it was Stefan Kung, I think, coming in, and he bumped Geraint Thomas off the hot seat. He came in 8 seconds ahead of him, I think with a time of 36 minutes and about 23 seconds. And then what we see, the next thing I remember was Tom Dumoulin skidding out. I don't know which corner it was. It was in the last maybe 4 or 5 kilometres, and his bike bucking all over the place. He managed to stay on. I think it was a left-hand sort of 90-degree corner, and then he went through the chicanes so slowly. Like people were saying, he would have been quicker on his road bike because there was these sort of an F1 track, and there were chicanes there. And we'll talk about how after the results, how strange the rider seemed to ride it. But yeah, that really bumped Dumoulin down, and he ended up moving from 5th at the intermediate, and he finished 10th with a time of 37:08, and it was, I believe, 37:08. So he lost a fair bit of time in that last half of the TT. And it was Wout van Aert, and Benji started getting very G'd up. Wout van Aert he knocked Kung off the hot seat, and he went into the hot seat. So Thomas was there for a while, and then Yeah, Wildfire was there just 3 seconds ahead of Kung with an average speed of 52, I think, Ks an hour, 49 and 49. And what was his time? 36:20. So a really, really good time, especially as he was sixth at the intermediate and he moved up to now being in the hot seat with just pretty much Dennis and Garner on the course, I think. Maybe I've got Wildfire and Kung in the hot seat mixed around a little bit. But anyway, the point was we saw Ganna, we saw him come onto the F1 track, we saw how he's looking. He destroyed he destroyed this TT. There's no other way to put it. He set a new best time when he finished of 35 minutes and 54 seconds, averaging, I'm going to round it up for him, 53 Ks an hour for this 31.7K ITT. And given how Dennis was then we were like, oh my God, well, Dennis was down at the intermediate. Ganna seems to have increased his speed. He's probably gone like 55, 56 in that second half. And then, yeah, what did you see from Dennis as they went on to the last 3Ks on the F1 track, Benji? Because it kind of looked a little bit all over the place.
Dennis did look worse on that Imola track than quite a few other riders, and in general, a lot of riders had this, that it looked like the Imola racetrack is wider than normal roads, and because of that, it looked like the riders rode that like they would ride narrow roads, so they would take their corners like an F1 car would. But the thing is, the Imola racetrack is too wide for that, I think, because you can take these corners way more efficiently. And I think quite a few riders lost quite some time there. And genuinely, I've got the feeling that if you pretend the road is smaller and ride it way more condensedly, I think you can do better cornering. And I think that's what Wout van Aert especially did with his technique and so forth. He was able to corner that quite a lot better, than get to speed again better than any of the other riders here. And that's why Van Aert was one of the best riders on the second part of the course, which just is better for him. And you said it with Dumoulin in that one corner. There were quite a few corners like that where I was like, oh God, this is sketchy. And it's also because of the weather. It was the whole day close to raining, with a bit of rain sometimes, a bit of no rain, then rain again. And in some corners, I really thought that someone would actually crash, but I'm glad no one did today. So that's the good part, I guess. But in general, yeah, Rowan Dennis didn't look too fire in the last few kilometers, and we saw that especially when his time cut came on the screen, because he did not end up beating Ghana, nor did he actually end up beating Van Aert, nor did he actually end up on the podium of this World Championship. So a failure on his part.
Yeah, I don't know how the corners affected him. The sort of we didn't see too much of him in the technical sections until right at the end, and then we saw he was actually. It almost looked like his back wheel was kind of drifting on the F1 track. But I'll read out the results to you all because Dennis was the last to cross the line. It was Ganna first, Wout van Aert second, 26 back, Kung third, 29th back, the second Swiss medal of the world champs already. Here she watch for the road race. Thomas fourth, 37 seconds back rather, and Dennis fifth, 39 seconds behind Filippo Ganna. Askren, a very nice performance from him, 47 seconds back. Cavagnard, 48 seconds back in seventh. Campanarts and Dowsett, 52 and a minute and 6 behind Filippo Ganna. Actually, okay performances from those guys, but still, we'll talk about them in a second. Tom Dumoulin, 10th, a minute and 14 back, just a bit ahead of Oliveira Bevan. Mikkel Bjerg, 17th, a minute 47, just 5 seconds ahead of Danny Martinez. That is a really big surprise for me about Mikkel Bjerg. Now, he's back to back to back under 23 world champs, 17, 18, and 19. And to be finishing this TT when he is supposed to be a TT specialist, just 5 seconds ahead of Martinez is really surprising to me. And he looks to have a different setup almost completely now on the Colnago, and at UAE he was on Pinarello's before. So I can't remember what team he was on, but he was on a Pinarello before. His setup was it was lit, and he looks really stretched out. I was watching it a lot actually, because he said he struggled in a recent time trial as well, and he didn't in a stage race, and he wasn't happy with his performance, or maybe it was Europeans, and he was just missing something. And then I was watching today, and he's just like he knows more than me. The guy was helping Tadej Pogacar with his TT recon, but still, he was moving around on the saddle loads. Other people were mentioning it too. He didn't look like he was locked into the saddle at all. And yeah, to be coming behind maybe, Yasha Sutherland or Nelson Oliveira or, just I thought his level would be a little bit higher. And I think it might be the watts, might be the position. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's just something to watch. Just a little bit surprising to me. And another performance from a Scandinavian youngster who I think signed with Sunweb is Andreas Legnossond, who came, it's a minute 30 back, but yeah, he's not World Tour yet, I don't think. I think he's still at X. And coming 13th, like Paddy Bevan, just behind him. He's an underrated rider, Bevan. I think he's still at CCC. So, yeah, good performance from Leknesson. But, yeah, Filippo Ganna taking out the world champs, ITT, beating Van Aert, Kung, Thomas, and Dennis. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not going to go so far and say it was a flop by Dennis. I'd like to see the Watts first. Changing bikes or whatever could be the difference between maybe being on the podium and being in fifth. I think it more says, what a great performance from Thomas it was, and Wout van Aert. Like, Wout van Aert's just bounced back from the Tour de France looking, he looks like the the unbeatable man, except I guess Gunnar won today. What do you think, Benji? It's been a bit of talk on Twitter about this, and I think I agree with you, but I'll let you say it first. A 31.7k time trial for the World Championships. Some people are saying that's too short. A true TT should be 50ks, so it's about an hour to really show the best time trialists. Do you think 31.7 is too short or just about the right length?
I totally disagree with that analogy, in the sense that a time trial should not be longer to get the best rider to make it, because for me, the best time trialist is the time trialist that can do the best on what most of the World Tour profiles of time trials look like. In previous years, the World Championship time trial was 50-ish kilometers or higher, which means that it does not really represent the real time trials that are in any other races. So you've got a world champion who is specializing in long time trials and cannot really apply anything properly on the shorter time trials that are actually ridden every single week, pretty much in World Tour cycling. So you don't have time trials of 50 kilometers in stage races anymore. And maybe that's more of the issue than the length of these World Championships, actually. I believe there should be more lengthier time trials in the world. Definitely in Grand Tours, there should be a 50k one at least once a year. But you can't expect the World Championships to be a 50k one if all the rest of the time trials are 25, 30, 20 kilometers, because then that World Championships race only represents, well, the topography and the length of that World Championships time trial, and not necessarily of any of the other time trials. So it's a different discipline, prologues versus long time trials. It's ridden differently, and different riders are better at them. So you don't really have World Championships for prologue riders ever, by the way. I feel like those guys are discriminated in this discipline. And maybe that's a weird thing to say, but there's plenty of riders that are better at shorter time trials and longer time trials. And those people never really get the opportunity of becoming a world championship in time trialing. So is that something that you've got on your mind as well, that there's a bit of an offset in that? And additionally, I'd like to ask whether you also want more longer time trials to be in World Tours, so it automatically fixes the issue of only having one large time trial in the year.
I think every Grand Tour should have to have a minimum amount of individual time trialing, and each one should have a team time trial in it. I think that should just be a requirement of Grand Tours. But I guess the Grand Tour organisers, they really call the shots. They can make the parcours whatever they want it to be. The UCI can't really do anything about that, to be honest. But yeah, I think 30Ks to 40Ks is the right amount for the world champs. It's the balance between, okay, Filippo Ganna, he's the prologue master right now. Can he do it for 30Ks? Maybe if it was 40Ks, it'd be a bit closer between him and Wout van Aert. So maybe you cost your countryman a gold medal with your opinion there, Benji. But yeah, maybe 40k is the right distance, but I think 50 is too much because it's not in the stage races. And Then it comes down to like who's recce the entirety of the course more, and yeah, I just think that suits riders like Campenas a little bit more, or Dowsett and co. I think, yeah, we saw last year in Yorkshire it was a long TT from memory, and I think this was a good balance between the pure power guys and the sort of I call them. Dennis is like a blend. He's still got the really high power, but he's super aero as well. And then like Campenas is all about aero, etc., and reconning the courses as well. So yeah, I think it was 30Ks, 32K is a fair enough balance. It's also 35 minutes, so yeah, I don't need to be watching a 1 hour time trial every year. I think it was actually a good length of time trial. It's actually pretty exciting. There's lots of stuff happening, so I wouldn't change it at all. But yeah, I've forgotten your second question, Benji. Was there a second question at all?
I forgot it as well, to be honest. But I do want to move into what you said, that we might have had a different winner if it was longer. And I'm not sure. We don't really have a confirmation of Gunnar on extremely long time trials. We saw third last year. That was the longest one he did. And despite that one, there's not really one in his history that we can point at. So it's hard to really guess how good he is at 50 kilometers. But from what I saw today, he was better in the first spot than the second part. But maybe that's because Van Aert was better in the second part than in his first spot. So it's hard to really guess it. It looks like they kind of took the stamp trial on differently. And yeah, Ghana was in general, in average, just the strongest today. And well, to be honest, I'm glad he is, because it's a rider I've been looking at quite a while. He's been quite a talent, to be honest. And throughout the years, we saw him better tiny bit by tiny bit. He also is pretty decent at climbing. And regarding cobbles, I'm very curious what he would do on for example, a Paris Roubaix. I don't expect him to win it, but I expect him to be able to be good on that, because it might be an easy way to say it, but if we look at the top four in the time trial, he's the only person that does not have a cobble history. So I think with a time trial skill.
Oh no, he won Paris Roubaix under 23s.
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember that now, actually. So I would dare to put him on Paris Roubaix next year and see where he can go. Maybe not this year, but next year, why not? I think he's at the Giro this year, so I don't think he can do Paris Roubaix this year. But I would definitely dare to try that 100%. And I would love to see what he can grow in outside of time trialing now that he has become world champion, because I don't necessarily want him to focus on this time trialing his whole career, because he's got plenty of things he can also do additionally. Dumoulin does that with GC and also did that in a Bing Bang Tour 1 year. Stefan Kung does that in cobbles. Dennis doesn't do that at all anymore after he decided to try and go for GC, and it didn't really work out outside of to the Swiss last year. And you've got Asgreen, who does cobbles next to that. Cavagnac should do cobbles as well, to be honest. He did decent at the smaller cobble races. So in general, I feel like riders that go for time trialing should try and at least get one extra discipline next to it, so we see them more. That's just my opinion. But yeah, I'm happy that he won. Italian in Italy. I love it. And yeah, that's great.
I think he's got a massive future ahead because, as you said, he can climb, and he's got Paris-Roubaix under 23s under his belt, and I think that was back in 2016, and he's already got 2 times second on GC. Now, not the biggest race in the world, but a Vuelta a San Juan tune-up race in January. But there's climbing in that race. It's a stage race, and he was second behind Oscar Sevilla in 2018 and second behind Remco Evenepoel this year. And I remember Evenepoel, I think, attacking him on climbs in this year's edition. I think it was back in or start of February. He's a guy I think can win 1 week stage races with the right profile. Just because, okay, say he loses a minute on maybe the one mountaintop finish. Well, depending on who beats him by that minute, if it's someone like Miguel Angel Lopez or Vlasov, well, if there's a TT of any decent length, more than just a prologue, he's going to gain that time back. And yeah, I think he's even a guy, I know it sounds ludicrous, he's a massive unit. Um, it'd be interesting to see if Ineos are like, let's begin our most difficult project ever of turning a time trialist into a GC contender with a man who's like 6'4". that might be a stretch too far. You'd need an absolutely freak parkour, I think, for that to ever happen. Someone did ask me that question the other day, and I think that wouldn't be the best use of their time, honestly. I think they should focus on, yeah, as you said, Benji, getting him on the cobbles, races
Big
like
Bang
that,
Tour.
and maybe yeah, Bing Bang Tour, exactly. 1 week stage races, Bing Bang Tour, and maybe another one that suits him as well with a decent TT in it. But yeah, what do you think Ineos are going to do with him?
I genuinely don't know. I hope that they do Bing Bang Tour with him because thinking about it now, that's honestly perfect for him. And we could see how he can get over these bergs because you can do cobbles then, but you got to get over those bergs with the best as well. Obviously, you've got a bit of an advantage with the time trial skills, but you still got to keep it in that race. And there's a lot of people that want to attack you in that race, so might be a good test to see how he is in explosivity towards other riders that try to attack him and if he can adapt towards that in some way. For example, if someone attacks him on, I don't know, I'm gonna name a random climb the Potter bank or yeah, something like that, and he's able to lose a bit of time on the climb itself, but maybe try and make his way back afterwards. How he handles that and how he handles the pressure of being under attack all the time to see how he can end up in the Bing Bang Tour. But I'd definitely try it. Would be cool to see him.
Yeah, definitely. It says he's down for both the Bing Bank and the Giro, but I'm not sure that's possible. I feel like the Bing Bank finishes the last stages on the prologue of the Giro, so no, I think he's just doing the Giro, and he's only contracted to Ineos for this year. I think I can't see him as having any extensions, so he's going to be getting a very very juicy contract, Filippo Ganna, for next year. I assume he'll be staying at Ineos. He's perfect for that team. Um, but yeah, just a guy who he lost the TT by nearly 2 minutes to Dennis last year. That was an hour and 5 minutes. The Yorkshire TT with Remco in second, and then just this year he stepped it up another level. We've seen his 4K pursuit time, and now Tirreno prologue, and then just yeah, the favourite for the world champs in Italy, and he brings it home for Italy at Imola. And yeah, I just wanted something we touched on, or you mentioned Benji, was the chicanes in the on the F1 track. Durbridge had a lot of trouble with it. Now I don't know if it was the rain that made it really slippery, but yeah, a few riders seem to really have trouble with it. Durbridge, Dumoulin, Dennis. Kung looked pretty smooth. I think Wout van Aert, as you said, just monstered it and pedaled through every chicane just about. And it's interesting, right? Because you think, okay, these corners are designed for cars going like 300 kilometers an hour. Well, probably not that quick in the corners, but still, it's like going exponentially quicker than the bikes. But I guess a TT bike is just so immobile compared to an F1 car. That's my hot take of today. So you can write that down. A time trial bike is it's not as agile as a Formula One car. So just we give you pretty good insights on this podcast. And as I say that, I know I sound ridiculous, but yeah, well, it's interesting. Yeah, these corners are so wide, and they seem to, having reconned it, they kind of cooked them a lot of the times. It was like as if they hadn't even done it at race pace. Whereas like yeah, Love Van Arch was just able to, I think, gain quite a bit of time there. But anyway, that was the men's World Champs ITT. Any last thoughts, Benji? What do you think about, did Campenas and Dowsett show enough? They're both. Campenas is contracted to NTT till 2022. But yeah, what did you see from Dowsett? Did he show enough for you to be, if you're a World Tour team, to be asking for his contract for 2021? Because I think he's out of contract at ISU and not. They haven't re-signed him yet.
Well, to be honest, I think he's only good at world championships and not really outside of that. So it's hard to really value him as a team when he doesn't really ride well if he's under your team, but he does well under his nation. So for me, I wouldn't sign him. But on the other end, he's a kind guy, so I don't want to disrespect him either. But outside of that, Dowsett, yeah, kind of disappointing because he always has this one good day on UCI World Championship time trials. So that's why I was guessing that he would do better than Thomas because I didn't expect Thomas to be at this level, which, well, I maybe should have, but I didn't. Anyway, outside of him, I think Dumoulin, I think you're a bit harsh on him, to be honest. I think he lost his time in the second half. This first half was looking good. And I think he lost his time mainly because he started making mistakes in corners and not necessarily his time trial skills, which I don't know if that counts as time trial skills, but I believe that if
Oh, you mean he
we
wasn't
scored as
losing
well,
power? It's not because he lost power. It was more the
yeah,
handling that lost him the
and
time.
as a consequence of being in terrible cornering situations at two occasions, I think that then maybe it frustrates and lowers your effort for the rest of the time trial. So I think it might be a combination there because he wasn't looking like he was actually dying on that Imola course trying to get the best time anymore because he probably thought to himself, well, I'm fucked anyway. But he didn't get that bad. 1 minute back. I think if you take away those corner mistakes and so forth, you end between a Dennis and a Cavagna, I think. But Campenart's disappointing. He said he did a good time trial for himself, which yeah, that's not a good sign, I'd say, because he's one of the riders that also focuses solely on time trialing, and he said it before, he wants to be the best in the world in time trialing, and at this moment he's not that, and he has really never been. So I'm curious whether he will keep that goal until eternity and maybe regret it in the last parts of his career when he sees that he potentially didn't get it and then be like, I could have done so much more. So yeah, I'm a bit disappointed there as a Belgian. On the other hand, well, Cavagna's not bad, Asgreen's not bad, so he's not necessarily in a bad spot, but there's just a lot of competition on this one, in my honest opinion. Last year we had riders that really were a shot above the rest with Dennis, Evenepoel, and even Gunnar a tiny bit towards the rest, but maybe that's because the length was larger of the time trial as well.
You raise a good point there about you got to remember, not each world championship is alike. 2019, the field was very different, and it's a different course to this year. I think this year, the course and field was pretty much the cream of the crop, except for Evenepoel. Um, I'm not sure if I'm missing anyone else. So they weren't able. Anyone else wasn't able to be there. Maybe Tadej Pogacar and Primoz Roglic as well. Um, but last year, Dowsett came fifth. He was 2 minutes behind Dennis. This year, he came ninth, and he was 1 minute behind Ganna. And what was he? 25 seconds behind Dennis. So extrapolating that out to the full hour, he pretty much did the same, if not a better performance in this World Champs, except he came away with ninth rather than fifth. And same with, I think Campenaerts did an okay performance, to be honest. Last year, where he lived in Yorkshire for just about a month, he didn't even crack the top 10. I know he had the crash, so yeah. I don't know. Yeah, they had the crash, so maybe that doesn't really count. But still, last year you had like Tano Kangat came seventh, Lawson Craddock came sixth, and Nelson Oliveira eighth. This year, it's a murderer's row of Ganna Van Aert, Kung, Thomas, Dennis, Askren, Cavagna, Campenaerts, Dowsett, Dumoulin 10th. And Bevan not even make Bevan, who came fourth last year, like 3 seconds off the podium behind Ganna. He came 12th. So yeah, it's super high level this year. I'll be interested to hear what the riders say about, people coming out saying, I did my best performance ever and I came 13th or whatever. Maybe, yeah, they say that. I think Ganna's at an insane level, to be honest. And his power must just be insane. One humorous note we'll end the men's ITT on is the worst marketing ever for a company I've seen in the last 2 weeks. And I know we're looking for at the moment looking for sponsors for the show, Benji, but I think we might have to write this one off because laser helmets, the Planche de Belfi, the whole debacle where they made a big promotion about how they were shipping a helmet across to Roglic for him to use, and then it just I don't need to explain to you what happened with the Roglic helmet. We can laugh about it now in the Stage 20 TT in the Tour de France. And then today, Dumoulin was back in the old helmet, and he used the new laser helmet in the Planche de Belfi ITT. So he's back in the old helmet minus the visor, right? They've done something, taken the visor off, I think, and was using sunnies. And that's going to be the worst marketing ever on the biggest stage, Tour de France and then World Champs ITT. And he's literally fucking thrown your helmet in the bin. And he's gone back to the old one and made some home modifications. So yeah, I thought that was pretty funny, Benji. Like, we'll go on now to the women's individual time trial. That was the news from yesterday. It was on the same course, pretty much exactly the same route, 32 k's out and back in Imola. Let me just bring it up here. it was the big news, which you'll already know, is that Chloe Diegot we mentioned on the preview podcast, she had a pretty serious crash during this time trial. She was obviously the favourite for America. She's the back returning champion from 2019, Diegot. I thought she was going to win pretty comfortably, actually, given that Annemiek van Vleuten, was not racing the ITT. She was actually doing the road race. We talked about whether she should be doing that or not on the preview pod. Other favourites were Anna Vanderbregen, who I think she's won World Champs ITT before. Marlon Rosa, the Swiss, she's very strong. Lisa Brennauer, Grace Brown, Emma Norsgaard, I think sister of Matthias Norsgaard, the Movistar rider, time trialist. Ellen van Dijk for the Netherlands. Audrey Cordon-Ragot, the French rider, she can sometimes do some pretty good results. And Georgia Williams and Michaela Harvey for New Zealand, I thought were going to do an okay TT as well, given that especially what Harvey had looked like in Giro Rosa. But yeah, the big news, Benji, from this TT is, I guess, Diegot crashing on that right-hand corner. Not even a particularly sharp corner. At the time, I believe she was like 30 seconds ahead of the next best time at the intermediate, I think. So she was going to win comfortably, to be honest. And yeah, I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know exactly whether they have the team radio in their ear to tell them, hey, you don't need to absolutely cook it in this corner. But yeah, it looks like this is what my perception of what happened in the crash was. She's in extensions in TT position. She keeps pedaling quite late from the back reverse camera view, suggesting that she hasn't really seen that the corner's there, or yeah, she's just pedaling quite late. So she's coming to the corner really, really fast. She then half comes up out of TT position with one hand, I think goes onto her right brake, which I don't know, maybe that's her front brake. I don't know what in Australia that would be a front brake. And she keeps her left arm, I think, on the extension. So a really weird position, not a balanced position, not a position you want to corner in. It wasn't a particularly sharp corner, to be honest. And yeah, I thought she could almost have hit it in extension, some people were saying. But yeah, it's not a corner. If you came out of extensions and you're in the bull bars, she should have been fine. Like, it's not a particularly savage corner. They still had padding up in some places. And then it was too late. She took a really bad line and was going into it too fast at that point. She then started braking while she was off balance and had weird hand placement. And yeah, it started bucking the bike really badly. People were saying it looked, has she flattered? No, it didn't really look like that was the case at all. It looked like she'd gone in too fast, then started panic braking, and I was bucking the bike, and then she went towards the barrier on the side of the road, and just like, was it Benji Naesen in Tour de France when the Cervelo got chopped off at the just below the seat post? Something similar. She had a pretty bad impact with her knee, I think, into that guardrail, which had a V. It was obviously quite sharp and sustained a pretty serious wound to her left leg. She seems to be okay. So she seems in good spirits. She's been posting some pretty quirky things on Instagram and stuff. So that's really good to see. She's in good spirits. I think she's even joking about it, how her leg cast isn't particularly aerodynamic. So all's well that kind of ends well. From that perspective, your health and your mind are more important than how you're going to recover. Sort of whether you're going to do a 50k an hour TT in 3 months. That's not really. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but yeah, it's a bad accident. But I'm happy that she seems to be okay, largely, because it could have been worse. And I guess that also shows how Benoit could have got lucky in that crash in the Tour. When nothing really happens, maybe I think he might have hurt his finger or something, but when nothing really happens with him, you're like, oh, well, it wasn't too bad a crash. But it's like he was maybe inches from slicing his leg on that guardrail because it sliced up and snapped his Cervelo seat post pretty good. Now, maybe they're pretty fragile, more fragile than people's skin and bone. But yeah, what did you see from this Diegot crash, Benji? And there was a fair few people criticizing the UCI. That's the first thing people do when there's a crash or something, for the bad placement of the padding.
Yeah, firstly, regarding the crash, I'm glad that she's able to make a full recovery according to the reports, at least from UCI Cycling, the official, national team. And additionally, the actual injuries that she has is not necessarily to a bone or anything, so she doesn't have broken bones, but just above her patella, just above her kneecap, she had a laceration, and the actual muscles that were, well, touched was the fact that she basically had a severed quadriceps and additionally severe damages to her ligaments of her knee. So it's not great. It doesn't look great. I unfortunately saw the picture because a newspaper used it as the cover picture, and I didn't like that. But in the end, I'm glad that it's moving forward and it's moving to a positive thing for her as well. That it's not career ending, or yeah, it's probably season ending, but let's hope she can make her way back quite quickly and hopefully she can be back at the top pretty soon. But additionally, those padding, well, remarks, I think it was Neil Rogers on Twitter that pointed out that he was not necessarily pointing out that it was a mistake by the organizers. He was just saying that he would expect in the men's race the day after that they adapt the padding to be longer, which was actually the case, so he wasn't wrong. But the way he said it, a lot of people thought he meant that he was blaming the organizers. So I think he's a bit of a misunderstood man in that tweet, to be honest. And I think the main meaning there is that in hindsight, the padding could have been larger, but I don't expect that an organizer can expect a deviation because of a bad corner like that. If you take that corner badly, you are probably going to end up a bit earlier in the corner, but she was able to somehow do the corner pretty well at the start, but then something went wrong. And because of that, she didn't really have mistakes in the apex, but just behind that. And that pretty much made the consequence that she landed in that barrier instead of the padding. So it's really unfortunate, but unfortunately, we can't expect to have padding all over the parkour. But yeah, in hindsight, it could have been longer, but I don't really blame the organizers in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of a freak accident in that it's not like she slid out because she hit the apex as you'd expect and then crashed in that way and hit the guardrail. It was very odd, and I don't really. I'm reluctant to blame the UCI in this case too much. And usually, yeah, I try my best to avoid Neil Rogers tweets where possible. But yeah, as a case either way, they did change it. That's probably just face saving, I guess, from UCI. I mean, if even if they weren't wrong initially, if someone crashed again and hit the guardrail and didn't hit the padding, then they definitely would be getting sued. So yeah, it's a shame. You can't pad the entirety of a TT course, and looking at it, it's not a particularly dangerous corner. But look, yeah, I'm glad that Diegot is in good spirits on the road to recovery. But back to the time trial, Diegot is kind of just like Giro Rosa, unfortunately. Annemiek van Vleuten was going to win the Giro Rosa GC. She got taken out by a crash. That wasn't her fault in any way. But yeah, it was Anna Vanderbregen for the Netherlands taking out the individual time trial world championships. She's already won the world championships road race. She won the Olympic Games road race in 2016. Just an incredible career. She's only 30, by the way, and she's already said that she's going to retire after the Olympics. So yeah, she kind of gets spoken about now behind, I guess, Van Vleuten and Marianne Vos. But yeah, Anna van der Breggen, crazy career to Liège, Bastogne Liège as well. She set a time of 40:20, average 47 k's an hour. Not a big gap, by the way. This was very close. Gap of only 15 seconds to Marvin Reusser, who was the first Swiss medal for the World Championships, the World Champs. Second one was Stefan Kung today, and then another Dutch woman on the podium, Ellen van Dijk, third, 31 seconds behind Anna van der Breggen. And yeah, she's 33. She's contract doesn't have a contract next year. She's moved to Trek Segafredo, Alan Van Dyke. She was on their team last year. Yeah, she's won like 29 ITT races in her career, and she won Dwars door of Vlaanderen last year. So she just kind of not gets doesn't get spoken about as well as much as the other riders, but still winning big races and picking up a handy podium here. Lisa Brennauer fourth, 45 seconds back, great from Germany, and Grace Brown, the Australian, who I think I spoke about in the GP Plouay tactics when we discussed that. She came fifth. Pretty good result, actually, for her. Grace Brown, Mitchell, and Scott Ryder. A minute behind Anna Vanderbregen. Amber Naben for the United States, a minute 20 back. Yeah, good result from her. She's 45 years old. She's a TT specialist. I think she's won two of the Chrono des Nations, and yeah, she won the World Championships ITT actually in 2016 and back in 2008. So yeah, amazing consistency from her as well. She's got like 23 pro ITT wins, and but yeah, it was a big drop off, I guess, from about sixth down to 10th. Audrey Cordon-Ragot, who I thought might get into the top five, came 11th, 1 minute 53 back. Good result for Emma Norsgaard, actually, though, the Danish rider in seventh, 1 minute 22 back. I think she has a lot of coaching from those, yeah, from her brother and from Mikkel Berg as well, especially. I think they're always tinkering with all of their positions. They're always doing something, and maybe Mikkel Berg messing with his position hasn't been great for him this year. But yeah, Emma Norsgaard, fantastic result from her. And can Anna Vanderbregen do the double? Like, she's looking in great form. Van Vleuten, I don't think has I'm not really counting her as one of the heavy favourites as I normally would, given her injury for the women's road race. And yeah, Vanderbregen's the favourite for the women's road race. And I can't remember, Benji. I'm not a cycling historian. Has anyone done the world champs road race and TT double in the same year in like recent history?
I don't think in recent history, maybe in women's cycling it might have, but in men's cycling, I don't think it has been at all in recent years. So I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, I think it's either Annemiek van Vleuten or Van der Breggen. But yeah, correct us if we've missed that. Apologies if we have. And just while we're on women's cycling and some news that's just come out, Giro Rosa has been dumped down. This is from La Flamme Rouge. He's tweeted this because he's checked out on Twitter. He's checked out the new UCI calendar. Giro Rosa has been bumped down from a world tour race to just a pro race. Tour de Suisse will have a women's race in 2021, and Giro dell'Emilia will not be on the 2021 calendar at all, and instead there'll be a Tre Vaticine women's race. So it's hard to, people are criticising Giro Rosa, Giro dell'Emilia. I criticise them a lot as well for not showing live coverage. I don't know why they're not World Tour races next year on the calendar. I don't think it's the UCI just going, hey, you failed to live up to your obligations as a World Tour race provider, which is to show 45 minutes of live coverage, so you're out. I don't think that happened. I think it's just folded. And yeah, Lizzie Banks, the writer I've been talking about for Great Britain, has spoken. I think she done an interview in Cycling News about this, about the lack of exposure for women's cycling or the lack of coverage, etc. And I haven't read that yet, so I'll have to read that and react. But I have my views on it. I think I have to write a piece or do something about how I would market women's cycling better as a self-appointed expert. I think there's a lot of things that could change. But yeah, I think the Giro Rosa and Giro dell'Emilia, it looks like they just didn't have the money to put the race on anymore, which is a real shame because Giro Rosa was, yeah, it was the main stage race for women, and hopefully Tour de Suisse, I don't know if it's going to fill that role next year. I can't remember whether the Tour de France, like 1 week stage race, was supposed to be coming in next year that ASO announced, or whether that was in 2022. I know there's Paris-Roubaix this year that's coming in. Unfortunately, Diegot was never going to race that anyway. So it's really hard to get into women's cycling for the average fan when the races don't make sense and are changing year to year. Like, it's hard enough for the average non-European sports fan to get into cycling when you're explaining to them why the Tour of Flanders is a one-day race, why Dries de Baan is one-day race, and
Sorry.
why the Tour de France is a 3-week race and the Tour de Suisse is a 1-week race, and how they're all ranked. Explaining that is very difficult to a person who's not that familiar with cycling. Now explain to them, okay, the women's races, well, it's completely different. They don't have the same names. It's not like women's tennis. Pretty easy to follow. You got Wimbledon for men and women. You got, I don't need to explain how tennis works. But yeah, it's just difficult when the races are coming in and out. There's no matching races except for maybe Flanders and Jesus, what else? Now they've got Tour de Suisse, Paris-Roubaix was moving in the right direction. Liège and Fletcher-Wallonne, sorry. Yeah, but they weren't televised anyway. So yeah, it's just really difficult. I'm gonna have to go and look at that, especially what Banks has said. I do feel like sometimes I don't want to put this on the riders either, but they can also leverage their social media profiles in a better way to inform people sometimes of what's going on with the races. I've no presence or had no presence a year ago, and now yeah, I can tell people where races are and what's happening, etc., where to watch them. And if the Women's World Tour collectively uses their social media in a cohesive way, they can actually get a pretty big reach to do that. But that's just something tinkering around the edges. There's nothing they can share a link to if there's not even live coverage. So there needs to be live coverage first for them to even be able to do that. But yeah, I don't want to end on a particularly sour note. It wasn't great to see Diegot crash, but still Anna Vanderbregen, a worthy winner. I hope Diegot can come back in time for Olympics next year, or maybe she'll have a World Tour license next year. That would be awesome to see her at Paris-Roubaix as well. And yeah, we'll see what Anna Vanderbregen can do in the road race, whether she can go back to back. Something Cancellara was not able to do. Men's race, I'm pretty excited for the men's road race as well. Can Mark Hirschi get the third Swiss medal for the World Championships? It's been a pretty good one so far, even though it snuck up on us in Imola. But yeah, is there anything you can take away from the ITT, Benji? Do you think it's pretty clear now that Ghana is the best time trialist in the world? Would you say he's the best all-around TTer in the world? I would say that. He's won gold today. He's won the prologue. He won this length. I'm happy to call it, even as an Australian.
I would say that he's definitely worthy of being called the world champion, and he's definitely worthy as being seen the best time trialist in the world. And I'm glad that he will have other results outside of the world championships. With Dennis, that was a bit less in the last 2 years, and it annoyed me a bit that it was only like the world championships that sticked out. With Ghana, we have the Tirreno one. I think we'll have the Giro one as well if he rides it like that, because it on paper should be the world record of fastest time trial ever, because it starts with a tiny uphill but then a huge descent. So it's gonna be really curious to see what that ends up being. But I think that's gonna be one hell of a prologue slash time trial. It's not really a prologue; it's too long for that, but one hell of a time trial to see, because the best TTers are up there. If Evenepoel was at the start there as well, we'd have one hell of a time trial. Just Van Aert is not really there, but I think we've got Dennis at the start there as well. Today he might not have been up there, but maybe he can be up there then, because he needs to find a way to make his season a bit better outside of this race, because if Dennis doesn't win world champion, what else is there in his season, to be honest? Not really too much. So he's got to find a way to get that success back this year, and hopefully he can find a success in this year at least.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the Olympics next year. He's still contracted for Ineos next year in 2021. But yeah, I don't know if he's got the Olympics. That was supposed to be his A priority this year. But yeah, can he beat Ghana again on any course below 40 kilometers? Certainly, if it has some hills, it'll be a lot closer between them. But there's some transfer news today. I think we'll save that. We'll keep this at around hour or just under, and we'll talk about that at an appropriate time when we've had time to digest how it might really play out. We'll keep this to the ITTs. Thanks for listening. I just realised that we have over on the podcast, we have over 640 reviews or ratings, because I was only looking at the British ratings. So it was much less than I thought. Benji told me how the internet works, and we have a lot more than I thought. That's crazy. I was kind of speechless, and yeah, it's just insane, really, having that number. That's like half of podcasts that are the biggest in the world that have been going for about 7 years. So pat all yourselves on the back, give yourself a collective pat on the back, and we'll see you with a wrap-up pod after the 2 road races are finished. I think we might take tomorrow off, or I might sneak in there with a little cheeky extra podcast if I'm feeling generous. Ciao.